In theaters now, in a relatively limited release, as far as I know, here in the U.S., is Gaspar Noé's new film entitled Vortex. Now, Noé is a person who you may or may not know. He is makes films in France, and they tend to be very extreme. I guess he's been referred to as the genre is French extreme or French extreme horror or something like that. He made a movie called Irreversible, and if you saw that, I don't need to say any more about that. I think he did Base Moi. He did a bunch of movies that are generally hard to watch due to Climax was another one that he did. They tend to be very sex, drugs, violence, in your face kind of movies that generally I just don't care for because they're just so grim and kind of unpleasant to watch. But the new film Vortex really intrigued me because it stars Dario Argento. If you don't know Dario Argento, Italian horror director of the 70s, 80s, who made films like Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Suspiria, Inferno, Cat o' Nine Tails, on and on and on. And not an actor. No, Argento started off as a film critic and then became a screenwriter. He was one of the co-writers on Once Upon a Time in the West for Sergio Leone. And then he made his own giallo, Italian mystery horror thrillers, and into, horror and more fantastical horror as he went on into the 70s. And hearing he was starring in a film was just too strange for me to pass up, despite honestly not really being a fan of Noé myself. So I went to see this. Say what you will about, and you hear me talk about AMC a lot because I happen to go to AMC's a lot. Say what you will about the giant megalith corporations like AMC that, have cornered the marketplace on movie going in a lot of areas. As much as they show every Marvel movie and fill their screens with all the family films, I find AMC tends to carve at least one screen out for some kind of indie thing that otherwise would not be easy to see. Now, Vortex is the kind of movie, having seen it, I was shocked that I saw this at an AMC that was relatively close to where I live, and it wasn't some trip into some obscure art house theater in New York City with a lot of time, effort, and money to see this film. So what is Vortex? Vortex is the story of two people. Senior citizens in France, Argento, who plays what he is or would be in this case, which is an Italian man who married a French woman and has lived all of their life as a couple in France. And they have one son, but otherwise they just live alone. And Francoise Lebrun is his wife. And the film starts with the two of them. I'm not going to give you beat by beat. As you know, I don't do that. I believe it. Surprises are important, and seeing a story unfold on its own terms is how you should experience a story in a film, unlike what most trailers do in this country for you. The film starts off with the two of them, this elderly couple, having a lovely little dinner or lunch or afternoon aperitif on the florally engorged patio they have in their French apartment. And they just say how wonderful life is and isn't this great. And then you cut to them laying in bed in the morning, about to wake up, and slowly a line moves vertically down the screen. And the rest of the film is now shot and told in split screen. One camera stays on him and one camera stays on her. And we discover not very far into this movie that she is suffering from dementia. Dementia is coming on to her, and it's coming on strong. And Argento's character is trying to deal with that, and he's trying to write a book. Interestingly enough, he plays somebody obsessed with film who has just a house packed with books about film, and he's writing a book about film and dreams. So he's trying to focus on writing this book and talking to his mistress a little here and there, and the wife is wandering around confused. So it's this movie where Argento is trying to keep his wife safe, but also focus on his work and kind of deny that there's anything wrong. And their son comes in to try to help out. So it's a very low-key movie. It's almost 2.5 hours, though I was never bored by this. It's very low-key. It almost feels like a documentary. Argento is very good. Now, maybe who knows if he's a good actor, but it feels like you're watching a real person for both of the actors, really for all of the actors in this movie. This feels far more like a documentary than it does a narrative film, and I think that makes it work better. It's just this heartbreaking story of how these two people in the fading twilight of their lives are trying to just stay the course and live life on their own terms the way they always have, and it's increasingly clear they just can't anymore. And the ending is very powerful and very sad. I'm not going to say what it is. It's not hard to imagine necessarily what it is, but it's just, this film is told so simply. And for the most part, aside from some scenes with the son, who is sort of a recovering drug addict, it doesn't have all the stuff that No Way films do that bug me. It doesn't have really aggressive, annoying camera work. It doesn't have really in-your-face extreme sex, drugs, and violence. It's really about these two people who are trying to survive, let's say. But again, it's done in such a low-key, naturalistic way. It just feels real. And, you know, if you have parents who are older or grandparents or have gone through any of this stuff with them, the movie hits home twice as hard. So this is not a film that will play widely. This is a film, this is really an art house film, which is, again, why I was surprised that I saw this at a big AMC, a big 16 screener or something like that. I highly recommend checking this out in the theater, partly because the split screen reduces the image size of each person. So no matter how big your TV is, it's going to be smaller, if that makes any sense. It's essentially 2 square frames in a widescreen frame like you normally would see. And again, as I say with everything, you just get lost in the film more in the theater. You can look at and really kind of explore the details of this couple's, like, I wouldn't say hoardery, maybe I would, jam-packed apartment. And like, I found myself reading all the titles that Argento had strewn around him. Like, what are the film books he's reading? And all this kind of, and stacks of videotapes he had. What are those videotapes he has everywhere? It was just fascinating. And for me personally, I've been a fan of Argento's work since I was in high school, I think. And to see him act was really interesting. To see him so completely inhabit this character was very interesting. And basically just to be able, even if it's in somewhat unpleasant scenario, to be able, honestly, to spend time with this guy on the big screen for 2.5 hours was kind of a treat for me. So highly recommend Vortex if you can see it. Not a popcorn movie, much more of a thoughtful, contemplative movie, but absolutely worth seeing, and really pretty powerful film.